Hello there! Today I am going to share with you how I top coat my preservation pieces without wasting resin and using tape or glue. If this is something you're interested in learning more about, then stay tuned. Hello again and welcome back to my channel. My name is Courtney. I am a flower preservationist, educator, and business coach sharing all of my tips and tricks for building and growing your flower preservation business. Top coating pieces always used to make me anxious, and I bet it does for you too. But I've learned the tricks for top coating pieces and I am excited to share them with you today. In this video, I am first going to share with you how I top coat pieces straight out of the mold. I've said this before, I hate sanding. So if a piece comes out of the mold perfect, then I'm not sanding it. I will simply trim the edged lip with a box cutter so it's smooth, and then I will just pour a top coat on top. This is how I do it 95% of the time, and it's so much easier too. The lip on the piece keeps the resin within the piece so that there's no spillage and no wasted resin. Then in the second demonstration, I will show you how I top coat a piece that has been sanded. Now, if I sanded a piece, it was because there was a large hair or bug or bubbles that cured into that final layer on the piece. Obviously, we don't want to see any of that, so we will sand them all out and then put the top coat on. Top coating without a lip is much harder to do, but I'm going to show you how I do it without using any tape or glue. No resin wasted in this video. So let's cut over to the workroom and get started.
Alright, so here we are getting ready to top coat the piece. So the first thing that I'm going to do is level the piece. I do my best to level them inside the mold, obviously, but sometimes that just isn't perfect. So I have to level it here. I do want to make sure that it's very level when I'm doing top coating, so I obviously won't have resin flowing over any of the sides. So I'm just gonna take my shims and level as best I can. I didn't have to do too much leveling for this piece. It was pretty level, but just had to do a few little adjustments. Alright, and now that it's level, I've already mixed up my resin. So I'm just going to go straight to pouring in there. So I like to start right in the middle, obviously, and just pour, probably fill it up about halfway, I guess, if you will, and then just kind of let it spread for a few minutes. This particular piece, as I explained, it came right out of the mold, so it does have a lip on it. We did not sand down the lip to make it a flat, smooth surface, so I don't have to worry too much about resin flowing over, especially since I leveled it. So the point here is just to pour enough into it that it will fill up this space, and the surface tension of the resin will just hold within the lip of the piece. So I'm just gonna fill it up until it's pretty much almost full, and then I'm gonna take my silicone stick and just kind of push the resin very carefully towards the sides. You don't want to push too hard or make too fast a movement while you're doing this, because otherwise the resin will overflow. Be real careful, especially when you're going into those corners. It's the easiest place to push the resin over and can spill very easily. So just very lightly pull the resin into the corner. And then here I'm kind of getting down at eye level of the piece just to make sure that the resin is high enough that it's going to create a nice flat, not like a huge dome, but have like a slight dome edge to it, so it won't have the inner lip going into the piece. So I'm just kind of pouring a little bit extra and just watching it kind of flow into the piece and spread, just making sure it's going to be a flat, level surface. I'm just kind of moving the light around to see if there's any hair on the piece or not, to kind of get the hair out. And then I will cover it up. And after I've let it sit for about 10-20 minutes for all of the bubbles to rise to the top, then I will take my little torch that I have, my little creme brulee torch, turn that on, and just very carefully slide across the top, eliminating the bubbles. And then cover it back up so no hair gets on it, and then I will leave it sitting for about 20-ish, 24 hours. And then here you'll see this is the finished product. Top coat has cured, so now we're gonna check it out and make sure any dust or hair or anything like that didn't get in it while it was sitting overnight. And it looks pretty good. So that's our finished piece. Alright, so now we're going to top coat this guy. So the top coating is obviously a little bit different for this one because it doesn't have a lip on it anymore since we sanded off the top of it. So this has a very flat surface. I'm going to show you how I top coat it without having to use tape or glue or anything like that and have a nice clean edge on it. You can see I've already placed my shim. I've already made it level. So I'm just going to use my resin. I'm just going to pour a little bit of resin on there. Much less amount of resin for a piece like this than one with a lip, because like I said, there's nothing there to stop the resin this time. The lip obviously on the last piece was there to stop the resin from going over the sides. So I could pour a lot more into it and pour it a little bit faster for that piece. But for this one, since there is nothing to catch the resin and keep it from falling on the sides, we're going to pour a whole lot less. And then I'm just going to take my silicone stick and just go all the way around the piece multiple times, pulling resin from the center towards the edges. And we're only pulling like a little bit at a time. We're not going to pull all the way to the edge of the piece first. We're going to pull out close to it and just kind of move the resin around. This process obviously takes a little bit longer to do than a piece that already has a lip on it, so the key is just to go slow and have patience, which I will admit is very hard because I am not a super patient person. So you can see I've pulled it almost as close to the edge as I can without actually touching the edge, and then I'll go back to the middle and start pulling resin from the middle again to actually pull along the edges. So just a little bit at a time, going around the sides, pulling from the center, and slowly covering the edge of the piece. Also, you'll notice I go from one side to the other side kind of almost as a balance so that I'm not pulling the resin all to one side at one time. I'll pull some to the right and then I'll move over to the left side and then I'll move back to the right and back to the left. That way it's a little bit more balanced. And again, making sure that you leveled this piece like super perfectly is obviously important, because if it's not level at all, then the resin's just going to fall right over. And I will mention too that for top coating pieces normally, I actually don't use a top coat resin. I use a regular just 1-to-1 casting resin. I like the way it looks better than the top coat personally for some things like these main pieces. So the viscosity of the resin is not super thick. It's a little bit thinner, which is why I think most people have issues with it falling over to the sides. But that's why, again, you just have to go real slow, be very patient with where you're pushing the resin and how you're pushing it. As you can see, I'm not having any issues with it being pushed over to the side. Now, I won't say that I have never accidentally pushed resin to the side. There have been times that I have done that, and I'll just sand it and redo it. But majority of the time, that's not a problem. I also really like using this little silicone pen for, this is obviously like the last part of it. There's like just small spots on the edges that need to be covered. So it's a much tinier surface area. And I can use this little pen to go into those little spots. Another reason, just for instance, why I don't really love to use, well, that was a hair, by the way, why I don't love to use top coating resin for things like this is because it's so much thicker. I find it's harder to spread. So I really only use top coating, like specific top coating, like countertop resin for if I'm doing flood coats. That's the only time I will use that kind of resin. Otherwise, I just, like I said, like to use this regular casting resin because I think it's easier to work with. You'll see as I move the light how it's not like a perfect shape. That's because the resin hasn't leveled yet. That's why I like to move the light around to see if I can see any like an abnormality of shape with the light. That'll tell me that it needs to be spread a little bit more. But here it's pretty much done. And this one actually didn't have a ton of bubbles, so I didn't really have to wait like I did on the other piece. So I just went ahead and used my torch to get the bubbles out while I was already there. And then we'll cover it up. Again, this is the next day after the top coat has cured. I'm just going to pick it up, do the same thing we did with the other one, just double check to make sure there wasn't any dust or hair that got in the piece. Make sure it all looks good, and it does. So we're done.
I hope this video was helpful, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tips on growing your flower preservation business. And as always, if you ever have any questions about what I discussed today, or want to learn something specific, let me know in the comments and I can create a video for you. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.